Hi, I'm Dan Costa, the Chief Content Officer at Worth Media Group, and I'm here at the Milken Global Conference in Los Angeles. I'm joined at the moment by Cate Ambrose. She leads the Global Private Capital Association. Cate, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
It's a real pleasure to be here with you, Dan.
So you are a Milken veteran. You've been here many times. How many years now?
I think over 12, maybe 12 or 13. Yeah.
And you've seen it grow. How big was it when you first started coming?
I mean, it was still pretty significant, but it's just thousands and thousands now, so it's definitely grown in scale, and it's always been an amazing place to connect with really interesting people.
So for people who aren't familiar with the GPCA, tell me what you do and what it does.
Yep. So the organization was founded by the private sector arm of the World Bank over 25 years ago, and it was founded as the Emerging Markets Private Equity Association. We're an independent, nonprofit membership organization of fund and institutional investors investing in the regions formerly known as emerging markets. We don't use that terminology anymore.
You rebranded it.
I rebranded away from EM to Global Private Capital. And that's really a reflection of the world that we live in. You know, it's been over 40 years since the EM terminology emerged. And we're living in a world where there's incredible wealth, success, innovation, and business development in so many different places. So the way I usually impress people is by saying who's on our board of directors. We have Bill Ford of General Atlantic on our board of directors, the CIO of Temasek, head of Asia of Canadian Pension Plan Investments, Future Fund, so those are some institutional investors, head of Asia of KKR, and then also some leading managers from on the ground around the world in Africa, in India, in Latin America, Advent International in Latin America, Patria, and the Middle East.
It aligns very well with the Milken Conference because this is a very global conference. There are investors from all over the world that are here. It seems like it aligns very well with your organization's goals. But there's also, I think at the moment in the economy, the international markets provide an opportunity for diversification that's really getting a lot of attention now, in part because of decisions that are made domestically, but that opportunity's been there for a while. Can you talk a little bit about how you see the opportunities overseas?
Yeah. I think historically, the U.S. has by far and away the deepest capital markets in the world, and we have the reserve currency. So there's just a natural risk aversion and a predilection to saying when U.S. public markets are performing the way they have in recent years, and then interest rates were low for such a long time, there wasn't really an incentive to look globally. In fact, the U.S. is so far behind the rest of the world in really important areas. For example, Fintech. The U.S. is at the tail end globally of digital payments and Fintech. We have an incumbent banking system that's been in place for a really long time that's going to just take a longer time to make the shift that we've seen with innovation happening in other places where there's not such a deep banking system or such deep capital markets. For example, out of Brazil, Nubank is the largest digital bank in the world. Its IPO was at 40 billion. I think it's trading at about 56 billion right now. Warren Buffett took a big stake before they went public. And it is an incredibly innovative bank that was developed out of Brazil only a little over a decade ago. Even if you look to Africa or Asia or almost anywhere in the world, digital payments, people are not using checks. The U.S. is the last place in the world that we're using checks. I was just in a discussion earlier today with some interesting CIOs, and somebody was commenting, I was in Hong Kong and I was really impressed by the airport. Excuse me, fly out of JFK. We are at the tail end globally of infrastructure. Again, we have our legacy infrastructure, and what's being built and the opportunity to build, really infrastructure that leapfrogs what exists in other places in the world is extraordinary. I'll give another example sort of in the tech space. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that CVC, the big European private equity firm, put $2.5 billion into a gaming company out of Turkey with a $5 billion valuation. We need to reset our minds around where risk lies and where opportunities are, and frankly, the wealth that exists in so many of these places as well. Maybe one other anecdote I'll put in there is India was by far and away the most active public markets in 2024. There were 337 IPOs on Indian exchanges. Why? India is a country with 1.4 billion people and actually quite a few wealthy people and very deep and developing capital markets. So it's not waiting for U.S. investors or investors from other places in the world for the capital to flow in. They have a domestic market where you have really deep opportunity to exit private equity backed companies, to exit venture capital backed startups, and to list on public exchanges and see great returns, which is what we've been seeing.
Yeah, it's actually been a big theme of the conference, these global shifts that are happening, these demographic shifts that are happening in the United States, in Europe. There's an entirely different thing happening in India, in China, in Africa. And it's not a story of aid or emerging markets. It's a story of opportunity and innovation, technologically and in terms of infrastructure, as you were pointing out. It is kind of fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about, our audience has a lot of family offices, about the opportunities for family offices to sort of get involved in this space where 10 years ago they may not have thought about it?
Yeah. Well, if we're thinking of U.S. family offices, I mean, many of them will already either have exposure or interest potentially, or maybe they're just thinking domestically. But what we've seen is over the last 20 years, the U.S. has produced over 2,000 billionaires. Many of those billionaires have emerged in China, in India, and Latin America. Before I was running the global organization that I run today, I built and ran the Latin American Association, which is now part of our platform for 10 years. And we have a really deep network of Latin American family offices from Central America, Mexico, all the way down to Chile, Argentina, Brazil. There is extraordinary wealth in so many other places in the world. In fact, as an aside, one of the most successful sort of platforms that Latin American Association has been is for global fund managers and some of the biggest people in finance in the U.S. to build relationships with institutional investors or family offices in Latin America. Now we have an office in Singapore with 4 staff on the ground. I'm spending a lot of time in the Middle East, so we're starting to develop those family office relationships globally. And what's interesting is the same generational shift that you see in the U.S., you see globally with the sons and the daughters of the wealthiest people in the world thinking about what they want to do differently than their parents. Historically, of course, it was real estate, U.S. public markets, extremely conservative approach to how to think about wealth. But the younger generation is just much more mission-driven. And so they're thinking, I want to do something that actually has an impact on climate. Or I want to have something that promotes innovation in my own domestic market. And a lot of thinking about, for example, I'm thinking of Cristobal Piñera, who is the son of former President Sebastián Piñera of Chile, who has a platform for venture funds. He's both backing, he's got his own venture fund, and he's also backing sort of entrepreneurs and looking to seed other venture funds. So building local ecosystems. I found this as well in the Middle East. I was in Saudi Arabia and we got to know Ibrahim Al-Mojwel from one of the large family offices, an industrial family there. He's building both private equity and venture capital capabilities and looking to drive more capital into Saudi. You would think that that's kind of reverse, but looking to bring innovation and new approaches into Saudi. So we meet a lot of sons and daughters of empowered people who are looking to do either mission-driven work with the family's capital, or just to diversify and really take the families into the future.
Is there anyone here at the conference that you're really looking forward to meeting, that you any meetings planned or celebrities on your agenda? Like what's getting you excited about the rest of this week?
Yeah, well, the best thing about Milken is always the people that you meet completely happenstance. So I'm staying at a hotel not so close to here. It's like a good 10-minute drive. And I was leaving my hotel at 6:40 this morning to get to an early morning breakfast, and there was a woman outside waiting for an Uber. I had called an Uber, but hers was coming first, and I said, "Do you mind?" And we made friends, and I jumped into Uber.
You never know who you're getting in the Uber with.
Well, she's the CEO of the California Pension Retirement System of CalPERS, and we were chatting, and I didn't really understand that she was the CEO of CalPERS until after I looked her up on LinkedIn and we connected again. So I really love just that experience of having the happenstance connection with people. And there's usually some athletes here that are interesting. I admit
Peyton Manning's going to be here.
Peyton Manning's going to be here. There was a year that old school, like Goldie Hawn, I know has been, and I was like, oh, isn't it fun to see Goldie here? So it's always really interesting to see. I think something that Milken does a great job at is it's truly diverse. You walk around the conference and you see, no, this is not just a bunch of people in finance. It's actually, some kind of normal people or artistic people or, people doing mission-driven work, which is very near and dear to my heart because that's what makes me excited.
And they even let in a few journalists, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Kate, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Great. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks, Dan.
That's it for now. If you want to see more videos like this, check us out on YouTube. I will see you then.